101 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, feeling around minus 30. It's minus 21 in Ottawa, minus 20 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Premier will have big news at 11:30 this morning for business owners and those in desperate need of a night out. The changing pandemic restrictions are going to be laid out at a media briefing at 11:30. Here's our Jamie Pulfer.
The Premier has been hinting at it.
We look forward to having a good announcement for restaurants and gyms and other folks that have been closed.
And sources confirmed to City News that restaurants will reopen to in-person dining at 50% capacity in just over a week, January 31st. The Toronto Star reports the announcement will also include gyms and movie theaters, although the Globe and Mail says those spots won't reopen until February. Doug Ford is set to make the official announcement today, with data suggesting Omicron cases in the province will peak this month, with hospitalizations and ICU admissions to follow. But is reopening safe? Infectious disease physician Dr. Isaac Bogosh says yes, but slowly.
I think it's going to happen sometime, and you can't stay like in the state that we're in for forever. You can't. If the metrics are really headed in the right direction, yeah, it's okay to do it, as long as you are prepared to change course if things are headed in the wrong direction.
Jamie Pulfer, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Lots of sunshine, but it is cold today. Some areas under that extreme cold warning. It will likely expand that warning to include more areas. We've already reached our high for the day for the afternoon near minus 17, feeling like minus 28. Overnight, minus 30 will feel like minus 35, so a very cold start to Friday. For today, already reached the high for the day for the afternoon, minus 17.
And right now, feeling around minus 30. It's minus 21 in Ottawa, minus 20 in Smiths Falls. National Capital Commission is going to hold its first public board meeting of the year. This morning's agenda includes a couple of contentious topics. Here's City News reporter Jason White.
The new Civic Hospital's parking garage has irritated some people so much they've held demonstrations against the plans. Drawings for the hospital's parking structure and its rooftop park will go before the NCC board this morning. The garage is slated to be built on Queen Juliana Park, next to the O-Train line south of Carling Avenue. The other major item for discussion is a report on crossings over the Ottawa River. A draft report put out last October found building a sixth crossing between Ottawa and Gatineau would remove no more than 15% of truck traffic from the downtown area. Both topics will be discussed at the NCC's public board meeting, which gets underway at 10 this morning. Jason White, City News.
City News time, 9:03. More than 200 vehicles expected to take part in a tribute convoy today along the 417. This for a tow truck driver who died just before 12:30 Monday on that highway. 33-year-old Phil Smith had apparently left his truck to assist someone stuck in a ditch when he was hit by a snowplow under the White Lake Road overpass. This morning, vehicles will gather at the RCGT parking lot on Coventry and then begin a convoy to Canadian Tire Centre and back in Phil's honor. That convoy is scheduled to get underway at 1 this afternoon. Now, a GoFundMe page to help out his family, including his two young children, has been started by friends. It's asking for $30,000, and so far just under $7,000 has been raised at the In Loving Memory of Philip Smith GoFundMe page. And federal data shows last October and November, the waters of the Gulf of St. Lawrence reached the highest surface temperature in 40 years of record keeping. Fisheries and Oceans Canada also recorded temperatures at 150 and 300 meters. Now they are at some of the highest readings since data collection began, and that was in 1915. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Is normal too much to ask for? It's just normal weather. Like the normal daytime high for this time of year is -6. Couldn't you go for -6? right now. Wouldn't you take that right now? -6. I'd have a beer on a patio if it was -6 right now. -6. We might see that once between now and the end of the month. Normal. That's all I'm asking for. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Oh, we are busy. Busy day in the news business. We're all waiting for Doug Ford. The Premier has a news conference this morning. It's scheduled for 11:30. You know, these start times are always written in pencil. No guarantee it's actually going to start at 11:30, but whenever it starts, we'll have some coverage of it for you. The easing of pandemic-related restrictions is in focus this morning. Some of what is expected from Premier Ford has already been leaked to the news media, namely a return to indoor dining for restaurants. Restaurant owners can go back to having 50% capacity in their dining rooms. But Premier Ford also promised that there would be quote-unquote good news for other businesses that have been forced to curtail operations during the most recent series of lockdown measures. They're going to dedicate a lot of time to this today. Randall Denley, author and columnist with Post Media, writes about the Ford government for the National Post, and he's been very tough on the Premier and the Premier's embrace of these restrictions. So we'll get his thoughts ahead of whatever Premier Ford is going to announce today. And as well, every Thursday morning, we have a panel discussion that we, funny enough, call Ontario Politics This Week. And this week, in addition and in advance of whatever Premier Ford announces today, quite a few polls out this week. Here, 133 days away from Election Day in Ontario. And the most recent polls offer a little bit for everyone. Abacus data has the Doug Ford PC party out in front with a comfortable 9-point lead. And then a close race for second place between the Liberals and the New Democrats. But that's not how the latest Angus Reid Institute numbers shake out. Its latest survey has the Ontario New Democrats in the lead. NDP 36, PCs 33, and the Liberals at 19. Meantime, Ecos has the Ford PCs up by 8 over the New Democrats, with the Liberals in third. Main Street has the PCs up by only 3 points. The Liberals are in second, and the New Democrats are in third. And Innovative Research has the Liberals in the lead, up by 1 point over the PCs, and the New Democrats are in third. So I don't know who's winning this race before the race even starts. I guess it depends on who you ask and who is doing the asking. Also on the show this morning, housing and housing affordability, the housing crisis, housing bubble, whatever you want to call it, housing insanity. We're on this story on a couple of fronts today. Steve Clark is a cabinet minister in the Ford government, leads Grenville. Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs. And yesterday he was joined by municipal leaders from all across the province, including Mayor Watson, for this summit on housing. It was supposed to happen in December, if I recall, and it was delayed, but they had it yesterday. The province has some of its own ideas about what the housing problems are and what some of the solutions might be. It's offering a new fund, money for municipalities to tap into. But what do municipal leaders feel they need to create more affordable housing solutions for their residents in their cities? Well, we'll ask an Ottawa City Councillor. Matthew Fleury is the City Councillor, Ottawa Vanier Ward. He's the chair of Ottawa Community Housing. He's on the show this morning. Talk about housing with him, talk about homeless shelters with him, and trucks, big trucks, and the long-standing issue of heavy trucks snaking their way through Sandy Hill and Lower Town, crossing the McDonald-Cartier Bridge. That's one of the agenda items for the meeting of the National Capital Commission today. You know, the need for a new bridge between Ottawa and Gatineau, which the NCC says is a non-starter. But when it comes to the heavy truck traffic, I mean, that is one of the local issues. One of the local files where there's been no progress. Like, really, nothing has been done on that, despite decade after decade after decade and study after study after study. There's just been zero progress on getting heavy truck traffic off of Rideau Street, King Edward, Nicholas, whatever the case might be. So we're going to talk about all of that with Councillor Fleury as well, coming up at 11 o'clock. Making his return to the Rob Snow Show today is Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. I'm looking forward to this. Veteran professor of comparative politics, international relations, distinguished senior fellow at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. It's called The World with Elliot Tepper. Perfect timing, really, with so many people wondering about Ukraine, what's happening with Ukraine, and are the Russians really going to invade Ukraine? Why would Russia invade Ukraine? What sort of response would that prompt from the West, from the United States, from NATO, from Canada? We have members of the Canadian Armed Forces in Ukraine right now. In addition to that, we're also going to get the professor's assessment on the first year in office for U.S. President Joe Biden. Not many wins for Joe Biden. 12 months in the White House. And poor old Boris. Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister, how long can he hang on? Now he has seen an MP cross the floor. Another rose in the House of Commons yesterday and pleaded with the Prime Minister to resign. He has an energy crisis to deal with, home heating costs for the average Brit through the roof, and, of course, the hypocrisy of the boozy parties at the Prime Minister's residence happening during the first lockdown back in 2020. So how has he responded to all of this? By giving the people their freedom and announcing that all pandemic restrictions will soon come to an end. Analysis from Professor Tepper on that at 11:30 this morning. Now, during the talkback hour today, between 10 and 11 o'clock, Doug Ford, hey, let's get ahead of this news conference with your help on easing restrictions. Easing restrictions. What do you think about that? No, it's not Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is still 3 weeks from now. But given where we are in the pandemic, as we head into the third week of January here, cases are still up there, as best we know. Hospitalizations are still climbing. Yesterday, there were, 600 patients? About 600, give or take, patients in ICU across the province of Ontario, either with COVID or because of COVID. So is now even the time to be thinking about easing restrictions? That's where we'll start with the conversation. We'll see how the hour goes. Talkback hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. Our call-in line is 750-1310. Columnist Randall Denley is next on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
Welcoming back author and post-media columnist Randall Denley to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Good morning, Randall. What are you expecting from Premier Ford this morning at 11:30's 11:30 news conference? What do you think is up?
A slow and cautious removal of restrictions based on the Chief Medical Officer of Health's advice and with an abundance of caution. I think we've seen this movie before. It's the usual way. Ontario backs out of restrictions. We certainly don't just say, "Oh, good, let it rip." So, and I don't think most people want them to either. So you'll see these things slowly coming down. I mean, the one thing specifically we've heard, which may or may not be true, is restaurants 50% capacity by the end of the month. The only good news for restaurants really is that January is a slow month for them anyway, but it's a very difficult thing. And to me, Rod, the big question now is, so what happens next? Okay, we had Omicron. All right, back to locking a lot of things down. Didn't turn out to be as bad as expected. Maybe it was, no doubt it was partly due to the public health things that they did. And perhaps it was oversold to some degree, but what are we going to do for the next one? Because we can't keep doing what we're doing. Every time there's a COVID case rise, we can't just keep locking down Ontario. So at what point do we cross the bridge and say, yeah, there's going to be other waves, and they're going to kill some people are going to get sick, but we're just going to have to power through it, which is basically what most of the states in the U.S. have been doing in this wave. We look at them and shake our heads and say, oh, they're crazy. What are they doing? Living a normal life.
Yeah.
But eventually we have to get there.
Why now? What do you think has changed? These measures only came into effect on the 5th, like we're talking 2 weeks ago yesterday.
Yeah,
two weeks ago yesterday, we had to shut everything down. Yeah,
I know. It's a very short timeline, which is good, actually, given the long, drawn-out lockdowns Ontario's been famous for. But the anticipation was that this would be tapering down by the end of January. And based on the numbers that were described yesterday in Christine Elliott's press conference, it seems to be the case. Case numbers have been declining to the extent that we know what they are. Hospital numbers seem to be plateauing. It looks like we're going in the right direction. You can see this happening in other places too, including the U.S., where numbers are now starting to come off a peak. So the anticipation that this would be kind of a 4 or 5 week wonder, it seems to be proving true. But clearly the government's not going to rush into testing the thesis. And the big thing, of course, is kids back in school this week, which is a significant move, and they did it on the timetable they promised. So I think what we'll hear today is not anything that's going to change right now, but their latest thinking on when things will change and hopefully in what order. Because you need some certainty, partly for your life, but for people running businesses. So reopening when? Because, you don't just say, yeah, you can reopen tomorrow, and everybody will just, unlock the doors and away they go. There's a lot of preparation that's involved for many businesses and making sure they've got the staff. They need a heads up, and I think that's what today will be.
Okay. So the polls have been kind of all over the place. I mean, there's a poll that shows the Liberals in the lead, a poll that shows the New Democrats in the lead, and a couple of polls that show the PCs in the lead. So I don't know what the polls are saying really right now, but nevertheless, the approval rating of Doug Ford has taken a hit. There's no question about that.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to lock things down and stay popular doing it at this point, 2 years into all this stuff.
In Toronto, you don't have to call in the army for the snowstorm. You just call Doug Ford. He'll come and save you in his F-150. So this is a clip of our reporter in Toronto, Richard Southern, getting Doug Ford on the phone as he's out there helping people during the snowstorm. Let's listen to this here.
Tell us, you're actually out helping dig people out of the snow, right? Tell us what you're doing.
Well, I'm just out there trying to help people. The cars, they're stuck in a snowbank.
and got a few people out so far. We're just doing what everyone else is doing. It's helping out. I'm fortunate enough. I got the Ford 150 4x4, and it's really making a difference.
What's the reaction when they see Doug Ford roll down the window?
I don't know. The one guy was helping me push. He didn't know it was me, and then he looked up and he goes, "Oh my!" But it doesn't matter. I'm just like everyone else. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I'm no different. You're going to help your fellow, Etobicoke folks. In my case.
Yeah. I'm just like everybody else, Randall. He says.
Yeah, I thought that was a very Doug Ford-like thing to do.
Yeah.
When he was a city councillor in Toronto, it was the kind of thing he did. And it's a city councillor kind of thing. We see it done here in Ottawa, too. A lot of people have roasted him for it in Toronto. He should have spent those 2 hours fixing all the problems of Ontario. What's wrong with Doug
That's
Ford?
Right, yeah.
I guess it's something he felt like doing. Was it a publicity thing?
Sure, yeah.
No doubt. I mean, his press secretary was sending out clips to people, so it wasn't like he was accidentally discovered just, quietly helping people out. I mean, the guy's a politician. It didn't bother me that he did it, although I wouldn't say it was a totally successful publicity stunt, because when you look at the clips of him shoveling snow, it looks like maybe he's never shoveled it before. He's got this teeny tiny little shovel, which is, maybe one you carry in the back of your vehicle, but teeny little shovel. He's got bent over, he's got his legs spread, and he's shoveling the snow back between his legs, which was a bit of a different way to shovel snow. So
all right, okay, all right.
It wasn't a total success.
Mixed reviews from Randall Denley.
Yeah,
okay.
Didn't bother me though, Rob.
What are you working on for your next column?
Depending on what Ford says today, I might go with that. But I'm also working on a piece about the housing situation.
Okay.
In Ontario, where there was a so-called housing summit, really just a Zoom call, I guess, about all this week, and the government gave some more money to speed things up. But this is a really big problem, Rob. I mean, people kind of know it, but when you put the numbers on it, it's astounding. And Scotiabank came out with a good report a few days back that said for Ontario to be at the national average for the amount of housing we have, we need 650,000 more housing units right now.
Yes.
So that's the size of the hole that's been dug, and it's going to take years to fix this. And I think we really have to focus on doing it, because it's a huge deal. If we're going to sustain immigration at the kind of numbers that we've been seeing, then how's that going to work? Ontario's getting more than 150,000 new people a year through immigration. They've got to live somewhere, and their arrival puts pressure on for people who are already here, too. There's a real competition for a place to live. And I'm not talking about a single-family home to buy, but an apartment to rent, just someplace with a roof over your head. And there's a real disconnect, I think, between federal immigration policy and what's happening with housing on the ground, because we just can't sustain this kind of population growth.
But how much of it is, because you've written column after column over your career about zoning and red tape at the municipal level, how much of it is a municipal government problem?
It slows things down. That's what the municipal governments are good at, slowing things down. And that's what the provincial government is trying to speed up. And part of this week's announcement was getting approaches and data all on a common base so that development is the same everywhere and we can kind of track what's going on. But it's probably the bureaucracy that slows things down, but I think more importantly, city councillors everywhere have a tendency to listen to and represent people who say, oh, look, we don't want suburban expansion. Well, we don't really want intensification either. We're okay with it, but not like where I live. But someplace else, it'd be good. So if you don't really have full support for either expanding the city's boundaries, urban boundaries, or intensifying in any significant way, how do you grow? And that, we saw in Hamilton a few weeks back where the council there, even crazier than ours, they said, no, there'll be no new development land. All our growth for the next 20 or 30 years is going to fit right within the boundaries we have today. I mean, that's not going to happen, but it was a crowd-pleasing thing for councillors there to say at this moment. But I would say that municipal governments are they're a significant impediment to development and growth because they're not really for it. I mean, you can certainly see that in Ottawa's city council. We're for intensification, and we're for 6-unit apartment buildings that no one's going to build anywhere. Suburbs, unpopular, sprawl, cars, and all that. Although we will approve that Taywin one, which is like way down the road.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that one, reconciliation. So it's hard to look at what Ottawa does and say we've really got a rational plan. And I think the interesting thing for Ottawa, when you look at the gap we have in Ontario in housing capacity, is, as people from Ottawa frequently point out, our city is geographically huge. Yeah, you could put 6 cities within our boundaries. What a terrible thing. Well, we've got a lot of room to expand if we want to. We are the second biggest city in the province, which is something Toronto tends to forget about. But if you were going to have a real capacity to absorb the growth that Ontario faces, a lot of it should be here. You can only jam so many people into the GTA and what they now call the Greater Golden Horseshoe. I mean, it's ridiculously overdeveloped there. You have people living in Barrie, working in downtown Toronto. I think Ottawa is in a position, if it wanted to absorb a lot of growth and become much larger. But that's just not the way we see the world. We're about, slow, cautious growth, fight it every inch of the way.
Okay.
And I think the government needs to get more engaged on that point.
Thank you for this morning, Randall Denley. Very thorough this morning. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Randall Denley, read his latest. He's got a great one in the Ottawa Citizen this week, too, about cliches. So wonderful. Right after the news, Ontario politics this week. This is City News.
City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling colder in the wind in Ottawa, minus 21, Smiths Falls, minus 20. And here's what's making news this hour. 11:30, the scheduled time for Ontario Premier Doug Ford to issue the latest measures in this COVID battle. This morning, it's expected restaurants will be allowed to reopen for in-person dining at 50% capacity. That expected to happen at the end of the month. NCC's first board meeting of the year will start in about a half an hour. A couple of major items on the agenda. First, the parking area for the new Civic Hospital to be built between Dow's Lake and the experimental farm, and also a sixth crossing over the river between Ottawa and Gatineau. Ahead of her meeting with NATO's Secretary General in Brussels, our Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly discussed steps Canada is prepared to take to try and stop Russia from invading Ukraine. Joly says Canada will join allies imposing severe sanctions on Russia if officials in Moscow take further military action. For its part, Russia says the West is guilty of provocations, like the British Army delivering weapons to Ukraine in recent days. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so as Andrew just mentioned, we're about 2 hours out, we expect, from the Premier's news conference. So it's great timing to have our political panelists back with us for Ontario politics this week. Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Rob.
Andrew Brander is Vice President, Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Well, let's start with you, Andrew. Premier Ford expected to make an announcement today about easing pandemic restrictions. Media reports indicate restaurants will be able to reopen for in-person dining, 50% capacity. All of this as of the end of the month, and the Premier's also hinted that a good announcement could be coming this week regarding other shuttered businesses like fitness centers, for example. What are you expecting from the Premier this morning?
Well, it's nice to finally be able to have this panel with some semblance of idea of what the Premier is going to say in the afternoon. So I'll start off with that. That's a refreshing change, perhaps. A more consistent communication style in terms of setting expectations would do wonders for the Ontario government in terms of managing stakeholders. However, of course, this won't necessarily be welcome news by all. I can assure you there is a vibrant club of football enthusiasts who are going to be very disappointed to be missing out on the Canada-U.S. World Cup qualifier game slated for Hamilton on January 30th. But beyond, relatively minor inconveniences for people like myself, I think we're really starting to see some frustration come through in levels we haven't seen before. As I, spend a lot of my time watching daytime cable news, the chorus of concerned doctors seems to have been slowly replaced over the past few weeks by a group of angry stakeholders. Point to groups like the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, who for the better part of 2 years have really sucked it up, emphasized the need to work together. They've come out and said sort of like enough is enough. It really seems that Team Ontario spirit from the early days of the pandemic has been replaced by and driven by survival instinct. And it feels to me that the social permission that did not exist in the early days of the pandemic for people to sort of rightfully air their grievances has now sort of been given.
Okay.
And so I think we're seeing a lot of that growing frustration. So I think the Premier's really got to come out with an announcement that gives people some kind of hope.
Hope, yeah. Lindsay, what are you expecting from the Premier this morning?
Well, I do expect, as we've heard, a reopening to 50%, and I'm hoping that we'll hear that. I think one of the things I've appreciated hearing is from experts like Dr. Lowe, who is just up for Mississauga Peel Region, saying we should be focused on reopening things that are for our health and for our mental health, because we have moved into the the reduction effects of this. Like, we're not focused on the spread quite as much as we are as the prevention by vaccines and boosters to prevent death and hospital capacity issues. So it's nice to see these experts sort of also saying we can do this, exercising caution, keeping distancing, all of those things. But really the truth is the Premier did not. He's lucky. He has the medical support and backup on this, because he does not have the luxury of not reopening. This lockdown was something he said he wouldn't do. We had done everything we'd been asked, and as Andrew said, there wasn't any, there was no leniency or permission to do this, because we had vaccine passports in place. People have done their part, and in this particular round, it felt like there were things the government could have done better in terms of testing.
Like, what more do you want from me? What more do you want from me? Right?
Yeah, and I'd like to think I'd be number one cheerleader on Team Ontario. But I'm not. I'm a healthy person. I have actually, people know this, I have had COVID in 2020. I have had my booster. I would like to be able to go to my gym for physiotherapy for my ankle. Like, that's the only high risk activity I had been doing in the last 3 months. So my patience had also run out.
Right.
Like anybody that had kids, the frustration was so high. So the big thing, with less than, I think it's 131 days today until the election, there was no runway room to keep extending this and to continue to build that lack of trust that lockdowns and measures weren't going to meet the deadline set when announced. So they really did need to make that shift to say we are going to meet these timelines.
Andrew, I want to pick up on something that you said, that it's nice to have some coherent messages. So you think there have been communications failures? If failures is too strong a word, maybe missteps, contradictions, and conflicting messages in the past. Give me some examples of what you're thinking about there.
Well, I think it's they've in large part been victim of false expectations, right?
Okay.
And like going back, I think when we were talking about coming out of the last lockdown in June on this panel, I was talking about the fact that if the Premier was ever forced into calling another lockdown at that point, it would have an impact on his electoral prospects. And we're starting to see that. It's also impacted the ability for the Ontario PC party to fundraise a little bit. But the problem, again, in terms of communication on this stuff, is that I'm sure the government would rather us be spending this week talking about the other things that they announced this past week, which are winners for them at the polls. The government hosted a housing affordability summit with the big mayors. They, are starting to talk about the rollout of major transportation projects, the Ontario line, highways, things like that. And instead, again, we're talking about what the Premier may or may not announce in a couple of hours. So I think the more that they can come out and be forthright with those sort of expectations, then hopefully the sooner they can move on to talking about the issues that they want to be discussing come election time.
Do you think, Lindsay, they've mismanaged expectations?
Absolutely. And I mean, think about even the vaccine passport. When it was announced, to me, that's the shining example. They announced it and announced that they'd hoped that it would be gone by the beginning of January. And so what was the incentive for people to get vaccinated and get their documentation if you're being told it's going to be gone? In a matter of weeks, it's going to be gone. That should be a pathway for our foreseeable future. I also think that the continued a lot of the miscommunication and false expectations is that kind of when we are in that complicated zone, number, color, very confusing for people, and just not having metrics At that time, the big issue was just of false expectations of metrics not being clear about what would be, need to be in place for us to reopen.
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm wondering why now? What's driving this decision to make this announcement today? I know whatever he's announced this today is say it's not going to come into effect until the end of the month, but 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. These measures went into effect 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago yesterday, and 2 weeks later, where the premier can announce, okay. In another week and a half, we're going to end some of them. I don't know. Why now? Why now, do you think?
And Rob, remember this happened when he had announced in the spring. We had that brief reopening that only lasted 2 weeks, and we had that announcement of, in 18 days from now, personal services were going to.
But do you think it's is it polling? Is it internal polling? Is it political, or is it?
There's just not people just do not have the appetite, especially when they're seeing that the death rates are low, that if you're vaccinated, that it's doing its job, and that it's now about making personal decisions based on your own health and wellness and the likelihood of successful outcome if you are to catch COVID.
Why do you think he's making this announcement today, Andrew?
Well, I think it's
2 weeks after these measures came into force.
Look, I think it's two parts. One, the premier always said that this was intended to be a circuit breaker of sort, temporary measures to provide a little bit of relief. So I think they had said hopefully that these would only last until the 26th. They're going to apparently miss that deadline by a bit. So I think they're trying again to give people some hope, something to look forward to. The only thing I'd respond back to Lindsay on in terms of people getting vaccinated and doing their part. The only thing that might have lessened the blow to the premier at this time is what I sort of refer to as like the peripheral impacts of Omicron, which we've seen in other jurisdictions, places like PEI, Nova Scotia, who have largely avoided being hit by the first wave, the amount of cases there, the restrictions that Premier Legault has put in place next door, the curfews, the vax tax. These are policies that quite honestly would make Doug Ford blush. Yeah. And so, this time around, it is way more present. People know a lot more people who have had it, but that also creates another problem for the government, which is, of course, the large majority of people have had relatively minor symptoms. So now instead of someone sitting at home comparing the closures and restrictions to pictures of people on ventilators and in the ICUs are now looking over at their kid or significant other sitting next to them on the couch, not feeling great for a few days. So, that's another communications problem for the government.
All right. When we come back, Ford in the Ford, digging out the stranded and the stuck. Part of the brand, Ford Nation, for the people. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Earlier this week, Doug Ford rescuing people in the snowstorm in Toronto. This is the Rob Snow Show, Ontario Politics This Week, and this is City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Snow in Toronto? Don't worry about that. It's Doug Ford to the rescue.
What's the reaction when they see Doug Ford roll down the window?
I don't know. The one guy was helping me push. He didn't know it was me, and then he looked up and he goes, "Oh my!" But it doesn't matter. I'm just like everyone else. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I'm no different.
Okay. All right. That was earlier in the week, the premier with Richard Southern of City News on the big snow day. Andrew, what do you think about that?
Well, we know now how Doug Ford puts his pants on.
Just like the rest of us. Just like the rest of us.
You know what?
It's vintage. It's vintage Ford, don't you think?
Who doesn't want a neighbor like Doug Ford? He is who he is. I can guarantee you, had he actually had any kind of significant announcement that day, it wouldn't have happened. If his neighbors needed a ride or were stranded on the side of the road, or it would have been delayed. Folks helping folks be folks. And to be honest, I think the premier needs to curry a bit of favor with his neighbors, who for the greater part of the last 2 years have been dealing with anti-vaxxers standing along his street at all hours of the day, protesting his place of residence. So, we can poke fun all we want. I expect a little bit of that. The ironic thing, of course, about the thousands of people who have shared content like this, accusing the premier of some form of sort of crass political opportunism, were of course just increasing the reach of the viral nature of these videos. And, I think most people would agree that the one thing that's remained largely intact during this entire crisis has been the premier's authenticity.
Authenticity, okay. All right. Lindsay, what do you think? Ford to the rescue.
Yeah, I've always said, Ford's dream job actually from, reaching back to his counselor days and with his brother as the mayor, their perfect job would have been running, Toronto 311. That's the customer service, easy to reach to when there's so much going on, and he clearly isn't delivering on things like, to the rescue with rapid tests to daycares or any of those things. This is something he knows how to do and is comfortable doing. So I will look past the not wearing a mask with a stranger in the vehicle or
distracted
driving by talking on his phone and doing a media interview while driving.
You're just looking past.
We'll ask him, I don't know where his OPP detail were. It's all of that aside. Andrew's right. He did a successful thing of getting us talking about something else, right? It is definitely he caused a distraction, and whether you like it or not, it does reach people who, with a very simple message of he's trying to be helpful, he's doing what he can, but that's not what he should be doing. That is not in the job description. The thing that concerns me, about it is just exactly that. It turns the page about the things we should be talking about the job that he should be doing. It got us talking about this instead of the fact that his Minister of Long-Term Care quit when we have outbreaks in more than 50% of long-term care facilities in Ontario. There's all kinds of things going on, and it is nice to be helpful to your neighbors, but his neighbors live in $4 million homes in one of the richest parts of Toronto, so they'll be okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the polls. Let's talk about the polls. There's a new poll out this morning, Angus Reid Institute. New Democrats in the lead. NDP 36. PC's 33, Liberals 19. But there have been lots of polls. Abacus, completely different result. NDP in third place at 25%. PC's ahead by 9, 37 to 28 over the Liberals. Ecos 35, NDP 27, Liberals 26. Main Street, PC's up by 3 over the Liberals. Up by 4 over the New Democrats. Innovative Research, Lindsay, Liberals 36. PC's 35, NDP 22. So something there for everyone, I guess. But what are the key takeaways from the polls, Lindsay, from the polls?
Well, the thing we have to remember is a poll is just a snapshot in time, right? So they are useful. They give you some content, and if you're on the right track or wrong track, but it's really just about that exact moment. The Liberal school of campaigns is we try to ignore them and remember never too high, never too low, just relentless, and try to not get too excited about polls. But it does remind us that, as I said, we're about 131 days from an election. People are all over the board on what they're open to. So it talks about how important it is going to be able to break through in this campaign and actually bring some issues forward, despite the news being all COVID, because people seem to be pretty open and a lot of movement based on these surveys. So it just tells us that, obviously it's been a rough, the one main message is it's been a rough month for the Premier of Ontario, with the fact that people thought we should have been in a bit of a better place to handle this variant that arrived. And I think it also, it's interesting because the people can say, when we've talked a lot about the NDP on our panel, that they might look at them, but as we know, especially with Andrew going for a fourth kick at the can, people don't really think that they are going to be in a governing position or can see them that way. So I think it gives a bit of an open room for anything, and there'll be wild speculations, which will be very fun for pundits. But I just do think we have to look at them this is an exact snapshot of time.
Andrew, what do you think? What do you take away from the
I think
volatile polling numbers?
I'd agree with Lindsay. I think she used the word, they're a little bit helpful. I'm not sure these are helpful at all, to be honest. They're all over the place. A lot of this comes down to the methodology, of course. These numbers don't capture in any significant way the regional breakouts, which are obviously so important. I'd expect how this reflects regionally is a huge amount of support for the Liberals in the really, really true urban centers, more support for the PCs in traditional suburbs, which you're seeing a little bit in, for example, in the Abacus poll. But none of these really do a great job in drilling down on those numbers.
Okay.
So apart from the top line, I think a bit more telling is the number around appetite for change in government. That's the one that that the government needs to watch. That seems to be hovering around 50%.
Right.
That number really hasn't moved significantly since Ford was elected. And while that's not a number that people cast a ballot on come election day, that does drive who shows up.
I guess I would just say, because we're a little tight on time here, I guess I would just say it seems to be let's say it is the PCs in the lead. It doesn't seem to me that a lot of voters have made up their mind if it's a change election, and if it is a change election, who is the agent of change? They can't decide right now who is the anti-Ford right now, I would say. And I wonder, and we can end on this, do you think, Andrew, let's say the high water mark is 37%. If on election night the Ford team gets 37% of the vote, can they win a majority government with 37% of the vote?
I'd say that's right on the cusp. Of where they need to be.
Because then it gets really interesting. That's when it gets really interesting if they don't win a majority government. What do you think? If it's 37 on election night for the PCs, can they win a majority government, Lindsay?
That is not majority government territory when you look at how poorly the NDP as a brand have done, especially in some ridings they hold or came in second in provincially. When you look at some of those ridings where they didn't even get 10 or 11% federally, it's not there. 37% does not get you across that finish line.
All right, interesting. Okay. Glad everybody's dug out. We'll talk soon next week. Thank you again.
Thanks,
Ontario Politics This Week. Ontario Politics This Week with Andrew Brander and Lindsay Maskell. The Talk Back Hour is coming up next as we get ahead of the Ford government and his news conference at 11:30. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
your local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling colder in the wind in Ottawa, minus 21, Smiths Falls, minus 20. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A media briefing is scheduled from Premier Ford at 11:30 this morning. It's expected to outline a gradual reopening of things like restaurants. Here's City News Queen's Park reporter Richard Southern.
Premier Ford, according to sources, is expected to announce a resumption of indoor dining. He'll make that announcement today, but the indoor dining won't start for 11 more days on January 31st, and it'll just be at 50% capacity. Sources this morning, though, are telling me that that capacity limit will gradually reduce and should be eliminated by March 14th. Sources tell City News that the Premier at the cabinet table has been pushing for all restrictions, aside from the mask mandate, to be lifted perhaps by mid-March. So we'll look to see if we hear something on that front from the Premier today. The Toronto Star has been reporting that gyms will be allowed to reopen at 50% capacity also on the last day of January. This will be Premier Ford's first full news conference in about 2 weeks. Richard Southern, City News.
Now we're getting an update on the GoVax mobile vaccination clinic that is hitting Smiths Falls today. For the next hour, they do have walk-ins available, some 20 doses of Pfizer vaccine for those between the ages of 12 and 19. From 11 to 12 today, they've got pediatric Pfizer vaccines, just 8 doses though, but walk-ins available age 5 to 11, and 1 to 4 this afternoon. Anyone over the age of 30. They do have 60 doses of Moderna available. Again, these are walk-ins. Usually the GoVax are by appointment only. City News time at 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Lots of sunshine, but it is cold today. Some areas under that extreme cold warning. It will likely expand that warning to include more areas. We've already reached our high for the day for the afternoon near minus 17, feeling like minus 28. Overnight, minus 30 will feel like minus 35, so a very cold start to Friday. For today, already reached the high for the day for the afternoon, minus 17.
And right now, air temperatures in Ottawa, minus 21, in Smiths Falls, minus 20. Couple of hot topics on the agenda this morning. The National Capital Commission is just getting settled into their first public board meeting of the year.
The first item is the new Civic Hospital's parking garage and its rooftop park. The parking structure is set to be built on part of Queen Juliana Park between Carling Avenue and Dow's Lake next to the North-South O-Train line. The plan has drawn the ire of some residents, even leading to them holding demonstrations against the parking structure. Next is a report on interprovincial crossings over the Ottawa River. A draft report last October found that building a 6th crossing between Ottawa and Gatineau would do little to alleviate truck traffic congestion downtown, removing a maximum of 15% of truck traffic. Jason White, City News.
City News time at 10:04. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says a recently launched diplomatic process offers Russia a couple of options. They can choose meaningful dialogue over Ukraine or face severe consequences. Joly is in Brussels for talks with European Union officials as well as the head of NATO. Humanitarian aid has started arriving in Tonga now after the Pacific Islands' main airport was cleared of ash from that huge volcanic eruption. Both New Zealand and Australia have sent military transport planes. James Gilmore of the New England Defence Force says more than 80% of Tonga's population has been impacted by this eruption.
There's going to be some challenges right from the beginning with regards to ongoing food security, and we do know that various areas in Tongatapu, particularly towards the northwest, have been damaged and structures have been damaged, so shelter and those kind of things are going to be important.
Now, Japan is also sending emergency relief, including drinking water and equipment for cleaning away that volcanic ash. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Again, the Premier's news conference at 11:30. We'll have coverage because that's kind of what we do around here at City News. But in anticipation of Doug Ford's news conference, I want to get you on the record right now, okay, about where we are right now with the current state of the pandemic in Ontario. What should the government be doing now? We have an idea of what it's going to do with restaurants, with fitness centers, with other shuttered businesses. My question for you is, what should the government be doing now? Should it keep the current restrictions in place? Tighten things up even more? Ease things a little bit? That's what Randall thinks Doug Ford is. Slow and cautious is kind of the name of the game when it comes to Doug Ford. Or should we get rid of them altogether and get on with life? That is a popular opinion. Get rid of restrictions altogether, get on with life. I don't think it's the dominant opinion, but it's a popular opinion. What should the government be doing now, just given the current state of the pandemic? So 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. What is the appropriate level of public health measures, of restrictions to have in effect in Ontario right now, given the state of affairs that we're in? Yeah. Should we be keeping the restrictions that we have in place now? Should we be tightening things up further? Keep certain businesses closed longer. Stick with remote learning instead of in-class learning. Do even more of everything that we've been doing. Ease up a little bit as the government appears ready to do, kind of tiptoe back into freedom. Or end restrictions altogether. Get on with life. Okay. Live our lives like it's 2019 all over again, right? We don't have a care in the world. You know, what way are you leaning right now? If those are your choices, what is the responsible course of action for government in order to limit the spread of Omicron? To try and allow the healthcare system to keep up with the demand. So 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Look, I know it feels like Groundhog Day. It's not Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is February 2nd. February 2nd is Groundhog Day. This is, what is it, January 20th. It's all over the news, right? Doug Ford going to announce later today, indoor dining can resume again at the end of the month at 50% capacity. And from the sounds of it, other restrictions will be eased. They've not lifted entirely, but eased for other types of businesses that were forced to either close or curtail operations after the latest round of restrictions came into effect, which was barely 2 weeks ago. Glimmers of hope is what the health minister, Christine Elliott, said yesterday. There are glimmers of hope. We're seeing glimmers of hope. They are of the belief that we've almost peaked with this latest wave, although they admit it's going to be difficult for the hospitals for at least another month. So I guess the political people have decided, to throw this out there and find out what kind of reaction that they're going to get back about the very idea of easing restrictions. Close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open. Things are closed. Do you think it would be responsible to open them up again? Even a crack. Stop me if you've heard this before. 750-1310. Let's get to the phone calls because it's the Talkback Hour. In Pakenham, Bill. Good morning, Bill. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Given where we are with the pandemic, what should the government be doing now?
I'd like to see everything get back to business, get things opened up again. If it's politically expedient for Boris Johnson to open Britain up to save his skinny hide, then I think it's appropriate that small businesses in this country get back to business and try and carve out a living again, because we've never really talked about the damage that was done to small business. There's people that had small businesses that lost everything. They've lost their business, their mortgages were tied to their line of credit with the business, they've lost their homes, and I'm sure there's families that got broke up over arguments over dollars and cents. And I feel sorry that we've just basically said to those people, too bad, so sad, we're the majority, you get to close your business to save all of us. But nobody's ever said about how we're going to save those. I mean, I heard Krista Freeland say that the government of Canada was going to give them $300 a week if they suffered more than 50% losses. $300 a week?
Well, I think that's for the workers. Yeah, for the workers. Yeah.
I mean, what? Like, this is chump change. I mean, you know, we've got a country that's got to get back to business. Would
you be comfortable? Let's say Doug Ford. He's not going to do this, but let's say Doug Ford came out today and said, at the end of the month, it's back to normal, and businesses are going to be, because this is basically what Boris Johnson announced yesterday in the UK. You don't have to wear a mask if you go into a shop. There's no capacity limits in any shops. No capacity limits in any restaurants. If your child right now is wearing a mask in the classroom, they're not going to have to do that. If you have to wear a mask on public transit, you're not going to have to do that anymore. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
You'd be okay with that?
No,
back to normal? You'd be okay with back to normal?
I'd be okay with back to normal.
Really?
Because
Okay.
people will make that judgment for themselves. There's going to, even if the restaurants are open to 100% capacity tomorrow morning, the restaurants will likely still only be a quarter full. People are not going to rush.
And some people may wear masks anyway, right?
Well, yes, of course. People, I think, have got to take responsibility for themselves. If they feel uncomfortable, then stay at home. If they feel uncomfortable, wear a mask. If they feel uncomfortable, do something else.
Okay.
But I mean,
excellent.
We've got to get the businesses back up and running.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you for getting us going. Great start. Donna in Ottawa. Good morning, Donna. Morning, Don. Yeah, hi there. You're on City News. So given the current state of affairs that we're facing here, what should the government be doing now with restrictions? Keep them in place, tighten up even more, ease them a little bit, or get rid of them altogether?
I would like to see them get rid of them altogether.
Get rid of them altogether, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Just back to living our lives. There's so much mental health crisis. There's all kinds of healthcare crises. Mm-hmm. It's not all about COVID.
It's not all about COVID. And you would be comfortable with that, as I said to the previous caller. No restrictions whatsoever. If you want to go to a restaurant, there's no capacity limits in the restaurants. You don't have to wear a mask in the restaurant. You don't have to wear a mask on public transit.
Exactly.
You'd be okay with that.
Think people, yes, absolutely.
Would you, let's say...
gone on too long.
Gone on too long. Let's say if it ended today, mask mandate, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Would you still wear a mask?
No.
You wouldn't? No. Okay.
No, I feel like we're living in almost like a communist country. Doctors can't speak up. It's really scary, actually. Okay. I think we need to go back to the way we were living.
Right.
And
get on with life. Get on with life.
And if you're a risk, then obviously you would need to take precautions and maybe be more careful, not go into crowds.
Yeah.
But it should be up to each individual.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Donna. I'm really curious about this opinion that's emerged here from the first two callers. Phil. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Mr. Snow. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
It's not. I don't think your question really could be pinpointed to one answer. The first caller said something about a monetary amount, and how could somebody live on $300? Well, there's seniors living on.
Yeah. Let's stick to the question, Phil. Okay, let's stick to the question.
Sure.
Given the current state of the pandemic, what should the government be doing now with restrictions? Should it be keeping restrictions in place? Should it tighten restrictions, be even tighter, be more restrictive? Some provinces are more restrictive than Ontario. Should we ease restrictions somewhat, which is the most likely course of action today from Premier Ford, or should we get rid of restrictions altogether?
I think we should ease them and sort of localize, regionalize them. We should look at the area. Okay. Look at the areas that are the hot spots in Ontario that are where the outbreaks are happening. Look at the facilities that are having the outbreaks, like long-term facilities, and address that. We're turtling again, Mr. Snow, and we're not addressing the questions.
Okay. Well, if you don't think we're addressing the questions, you don't have to call anymore. All right. This guy is a band caller who keeps changing his name. Okay, I know who you are, and I don't want you to call here anymore. 10:15, Rob Snow Show, City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
(750-1310). Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Okay, so a few callers have suggested get rid of the restrictions altogether. Let's get on with life. One of the callers recommended, well, but why do we have to have province-wide policies? Let's have regional policies. We used to have regional policies, right? But given the current state of the pandemic, what should the Ontario government be doing now? Should it be keeping these current restrictions in place? Should it be tightening things up? Should it be easing things a little bit, which is maybe the most likely scenario that Doug Ford will announce in a little more than an hour from now? Get rid of restrictions altogether, popular opinion. And let's get on with living life. What do you think? What should the government be doing now? Given where we are with the pandemic at this point in time, January 20th of 2022. Eric in South Keys. Eric.
Hi, Rob. How are you this morning?
I'm good, Eric. Thank you very much, sir, for asking. What should the government be doing now?
Well, I'm of the opinion of Bill and Donna.
Okay.
I think we should be opening things right up.
Open it right up. Okay.
Yeah. There's been too many restrictions for too long at this point. Let's face it, human beings, any animal for that matter, was not built to be caged, right? And that's, I think, how a lot of people I speak to feel.
Okay.
And I do believe, however, that there is an approach for caution as well. So let's open it up. If someone feels like myself, okay, no more masks, let's go, let's pitter patter, let's get at her kind of mentality.
Okay, all right.
But someone is still a little bit on the fence, then wear your mask. go ahead. Just don't begrudge each other. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that mentality of
Would
like,
you ditch your mask? Like, let's say Premier Ford came out today and said, you don't have to wear a mask anymore.
See you, goodbye.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, see you, goodbye. Okay, all right.
You know, I just don't want to see where, if that were the case, where people would stop that division again and shaming people for what their beliefs and their opinions, right?
Right, okay.
Because that happened for a while. You know, let people live their comfort level.
All right.
It's as simple as that.
All right, Eric. Thank you. Well, yeah, it's as we're learning 2 years on. Nothing about this is simple. Nothing about this is simple. Michael in Orleans. Michael.
Well, the first G7 nation has called it quits, so the dominoes will begin to fall. This thing is pretty much over, so time to get back at it, my friends. Time to open up.
Open up? Okay.
100%. Now, if you feel like the previous caller, he kind of took my thunder, but
right.
If you feel like you want to wear a mask, please go right ahead. If you're a business owner and you want to continue to keep mandated mask policies and that poster up on your window, you are free to do so. However, the tide has turned. No longer is it mandatory. It's if you feel like doing that, you are free to do so, but the rest don't have to do it. I think this is a great thing. I think it's a step forward, and we keep trying to reel it back in and pull it back. But I
don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like you think Doug Ford's moving way too slow.
Oh, you know what? You have to ask yourself, are we
like it's going to be 50% capacity in a week and a half?
But,
like it's
no,
not.
I understand.
Right?
Are we following science, Rob, or are we following politics? Because Quebec is basically in a lockdown. Saskatchewan is wide open.
Yeah, such a good
and
point
Ontario is kind of in the middle, in the minutia, if you will, which is going to be political suicide for Ford. But that being said, we're not following the science. Saskatchewan's wide open. Quebec is locked down. And Britain just opened wide up. So this thing, it's in its death throes. It's time to open up. And if you ask me, would I get rid of my mask? I already have. Not many business owners ask me to put it on.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Thank you. That's pretty hardcore. But he does make a point, because arguably Quebec has been the most restrictive of the province. I mean, it imposed a curfew not once but twice. Illegal to leave your house during certain hours of the day. Widespread business closures continue, and the premier is still planning. Premier Legault insists that he's going to bring in that tax on the unvaccinated. You know, nothing like that in Ontario. But Ontario is more restrictive than a province like Saskatchewan, where it's pretty much wide open. Premier Scott Moe has insisted no more lockdowns. And so far, for better or worse, he's been true to his word on that. And what he has appealed to is his constituents or his residents' sense of personal responsibility, telling them that it's their responsibility to take care of themselves and their loved ones, to get vaccinated, to get tested, don't go to work if you're sick, isolate if you test positive. He has made the appeal to the individual, and the individual's reward, I guess, is just about everything is open. There's still a mask mandate in effect. People still need to show proof of vaccination to enter certain places, but they have places where they actually need to show their vaccination certificate. They can actually go to places. And there are isolation rules in effect for people who test positive, but lockdown measures, restrictions, capacity limits, no, because that's as far as that provincial government is willing to go. My question is, what should we be doing here? What should we be doing here? We're about an hour out from the Premier's news conference. Jason Barhaven. Jason, good morning.
Morning, Rob.
Morning, Jason. What should we be doing here?
Oh, well, I think we've been all along. We've been following like kind of behind Israel and UK, right? Or looking to them kind of for what's going to happen next, right? They've been a little bit ahead of us.
Okay.
This news story now, Professor Cyril Cohen, he's the head of immunology at Bal-An University in Israel. He's a member of the Israeli Advisory Committee for the Israeli government. And he has just said, come out and apologize, says that they made a mistake with school closures and lockdowns. He says in the age of Omicron now, with the widespread infection And with they had hoped, he also apologized for how they had hoped that the vaccines would be better at preventing transmission. And obviously with Omicron, that's not the case. So he is saying now that herd immunity is inevitable because of the widespread transmissibility of Omicron.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, he's apologized and said the lockdown.
Right. Okay, so that's in Israel, but let's bring it back here. What should we be doing here? What should we be doing here?
I think we should be ending restrictions. I mean, this is
no restrictions.
Even on CNN, their most ardent restriction supporters are saying masks don't even work anymore. Like, unless it's an N95 fitted mask. Like, why are kids having to wear masks at school that don't work? Right? Like, there's a study at a Brown University talking about how it's leading to cognitive disabilities in children because they're not recognizing adults' facial. You know what I mean? It's part of like when you're developing as an infant. That's a big part of development is the facial expressions that you see from the adults, right? So anyway, yeah.
Open it up. Open it up. You're saying.
Open it up. Absolutely.
Open it up. All right. Gotta go. Yeah. Thank you. One more, and then it's halftime. Cindy in Ottawa. Cindy.
Hi.
Cindy, what should we be doing here right now? It's January 20th of 2022. Doug Ford in an hour is going to say you can open up a teeny tiny little bit. What should we be doing?
I agree with them. I think we've gone this far.
Yeah.
We need to open up gradually.
And
I'd like to put a question out there to these people that are saying open up. If you have lost a loved one or witness someone give birth to a dead baby, maybe you change your mind.
Okay.
We've had a lot of losses this year.
Yes.
And it's all pointing in one direction from COVID.
Oh, really?
We had 6 babies go to CHEO and were admitted. So you talk to that mother that had to watch their child be admitted into the hospital, and they're assuming it's because the mother wasn't vaccinated and the baby did not receive immunity.
Oh, okay.
So I realize they're opening up over in London, and they are saying herd immunity.
Well, to me, and we can talk about this after the news, but it's not so much that they're opening in London or in the UK. It's why they're opening. You have a politician who's in some pretty dire straits right now. His own MPs want to get rid of him. Some of his own MPs want to get rid of him. So we see how this has become so politically charged now. Even these restrictions have become, I'm in political trouble. I'm going to ease all the pandemic restrictions and give people some freedom. So that's one of the interesting developments, I think, of the last 24 hours when it comes to pandemic restrictions is how they've become supercharged politically. Back after the news, Talk Back Hour, 750-1310. Rob Snow Show, City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling colder in the wind, but it's minus 20 in Ottawa, minus 19 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. A limited number of walk-ins are being accepted today at the Smiths Falls GoVax mobile clinic at the Curling Club. For the next half hour, anyone 12 to 19, then between 11 and 12, anyone age 5 to 11, and then from 1 to 4 this afternoon, anyone over 30. There are limited numbers of shots available for those walk-ins. Number of people in ICUs in our province continues to climb, even as the number of people in hospital diminishes today. 72 fewer people in hospital across Ontario compared to yesterday. But the number of ICU patients increased by 5 from yesterday's total of 589. The province has also recorded another 75 deaths from this virus today. The new case count dropping below 8,000, with 300 of them in Ottawa, 151 new cases in Eastern Ontario, 59 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 9 more in Renfrew County. The Premier about an hour away from a media briefing scheduled. Doug Ford expected to outline the easing of dining restrictions in restaurants to 50% capacity at the end of the month. Other measures are expected to be announced as well, as the Premier, Health Minister, and others will hold this briefing at 11:30. Canada is prepared to take action against Russia if further military action other than troop buildup at the Ukraine border continues. More on this coming up at 11 o'clock with our Parliament Hill reporter, Cormac McSweeney. City News Time, 10:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Given the state of the pandemic, what should government be doing right now? I have a news conference in about an hour's time from the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford. Open things up a teeny tiny little bit. 50% capacity at restaurants, maybe some other measures are being relaxed by the end of the month. We'll have to wait and hear from the Premier. But what should the government be doing now? Do you keep the current restrictions in place? Do you tighten things up even more? Not a lot of takers on that one. Hey, let's tighten things down even more. Ease them somewhat, which is what we expect to hear from the Premier today, or get rid of them altogether and get on with life. What should government be doing now? I mean, there's always politics, right, involved in all of these decisions, because these decisions are made by politicians. And you can't detach the public health decision-making process from the political realities of the day. And the political realities of the day is Doug Ford wants to get reelected and wants to win a second term and be premier for another 4 or 5 years of a PC government. And, the polls are all over the place, but the Abacus poll shows that he has a pretty good shot at doing that right now. But, right? I can't get a test. Shortage of rapid tests. Overwhelmed hospitals, canceled surgeries, anxiety about schools, closed businesses. All of that takes a toll. It would take a toll on any premier. It would take a toll on any government. And the Ontario election is in 4.5 months. It's in 4 months and 13 days from now. The legislature isn't back until after Family Day, which is in about a month from now on the 21st of February. So, Doug Ford is trying to give people some hope and maybe ride a spring reopening recovery all the way to re-election. But the longer these lockdown type measures exist, the longer people are going to be mad at the government. The longer there are stories about hospitals being crushed by Omicron, the longer there are stories of people having to wait for delayed medical procedures, the longer people suffer if they're business owners from not being able to operate like it's business as usual. The longer that all goes on, the worse it's going to be for Doug Ford and the PC party. You'd like to think, public health and people's safety, they're the only considerations for government. But this close to an election, that's not the case. Politics is coloring everything. I'm sure the premier would like nothing more than to have the economy pretty much wide open by the time the writ drops, with no restrictions on businesses. You can pick, patios packed and dining rooms full and people going to the Blue Jays game, all the rest of it, just in time for spring and summer, and the situation in the hospitals can go back to their, regularly scheduled chaos. I think in the PC camp, they're hoping everyone has a great May 2-4 long weekend. Goes camping, sees the family, takes a road trip, or has a nice meal, whatever. And that there are true signs that we are coming out the other side of this once and for all. And the reward is Doug Ford's reelected with another majority government. To me, it's the politics of it all. The politics of it all. From a public safety point of view, from a public health point of view, but what is the responsible thing for government to be doing right now? Right? Current restrictions remain in place. You tighten things up even more. Do you ease restrictions? Do you get rid of restrictions? No more restrictions. It's over. We declare it's over. Go back to living your life. No more capacity limits, no more business closures, no more school closures, and you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Let's just get on with things. That's the majority opinion right now of the callers. 750-1310. 750-1310. To the phones. Second half of the Talkback Hour on City News. Jeremy. Good morning, Jeremy, Smith Falls.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good, Jeremy. Thank you. What should the government be doing now?
Opening back up. Everything should go right back.
Open it right back up. Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the reasons are, like, you see the inflation, you see the stock shortages going on, the truckers are about to riot. And not only that, but I mean, even worldwide, we got a prime minister who's talking Tommy Tough Guy with Russian Putin. And, I mean, I don't really see them, COVID masking as they come across that border.
Okay. All right. Open it wide up. Open it. You really think we're ready for that?
I definitely do.
You do?
There's
Okay.
been a whole bunch of us that have been going non-stop. The only thing that gets in the way is a little bit of protocols they enforce on you. But other than that,
Right.
I travel for work, and still it hasn't stopped.
You travel for work, you said, Jeremy?
Yep.
Do you travel to the United States?
No.
No? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I thought you meant you...
Not that I'd tell somebody before I had to quarantine.
Okay. No. Okay. No. I'm just wondering because you watch some of the football games on television. It's like COVID. What COVID? When you watch some of these,
I would love it, yeah. I wish I got to go there for that. That'd be great fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Wide open. Wide open.
Yeah, wide open.
Wide open.
Before
Okay.
this Russian thing happens, and we can't even go to a bar before you get shipped off.
Okay. All right. Let's behave ourselves. 750-1310. 750-1310. What should we be doing right now? Derek, Ottawa. Derek, good morning.
Hey, Rob, open it up.
Open it up. Okay.
Yeah, you mean you're talking about political popularity, I guess, and Boris Johnson. Look at there's a guy in Florida, the Florida governor. He's going to be the next presidential candidate, Ron DeSantis. He's stood his ground like 6-7 months ago, took a lot of flack. They've been open. They're still open. You watch an NFL game, they're all open. We should have opened months ago. It's time to open it up.
Open it up.
Open it up.
Sold out hockey games.
Sure.
Packed restaurants.
Yeah, if somebody's hesitant, don't go.
Personal responsibility. If you're worried about your own personal safety, then you don't have to go. Or you can wear a mask.
Peanut butter. I don't go eating peanut butter sandwiches.
All right.
It's as simple as that.
Okay. All right, Derek. Thank you, Derek. Okay. All right. Sam just says Florida. Like, where in Florida, Sam, are you calling from?
I'm from Orlando. I'm calling from Orlando.
Orlando. Okay. Okay. All right.
And it's great here.
And when you say it's great there, what do you mean?
Well, you wear a mask if you want to. And
right.
Everything's open. Life is normal.
Life is normal. Okay.
Life is normal. The only difference is some people are wearing masks, and I believe they're mostly the Canadian tourists that are wearing the masks.
Right. Okay. Okay. Are you Canadian, Sam, or are you a snowbird?
Yes, I am, from Ottawa.
From Ottawa. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just time. I mean, it's obviously the lockdowns are not working. It's been 2 years. You know, there's one pandemic after another. You can't live locked down. You have to eventually just say, okay, it's not working. If you don't want to, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't feel comfortable going to a restaurant, don't go. I think it's just time.
Okay.
Ludicrous.
Okay. So you're there in the land of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I love Orlando. Everything is world in Orlando. It's like, Disney World, and you've got like Gator World. Everything is world. Everything's the best in the world in Orlando. But it's pretty much wide open, right? Wide open.
Yeah, it is. It's not pretty much. It is totally wide open.
Yeah, but what's the situation with the healthcare system? Is it holding up, or are the hospitals swamped, or?
From what I've heard, from the locals per se, it's things are fine.
Yeah.
The hospitals aren't overwhelmed.
Okay.
And so it's.
Do you think
really
that's just
nice
part of
the
Florida is just different culturally than Ottawa? That there's more maybe individuality, I guess, in Florida or in the United States, generally speaking, the power of the individual. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
And
All right.
I think health is your own responsibility.
Right. Okay.
So that's how I feel.
Yeah. No, thank you for calling, Sam. How's the weather?
Thanks.
It's freezing here today. How's the weather? Make me jealous.
Yeah, you don't want to know.
I don't
want to know.
No, I know. I know already. I had David look it up. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Yeah, right now it's sunny and 20 degrees. With a high of 27 in Orlando. Yeah, isn't that great? Wouldn't you take that right about now, David? You and me on the first tee? Yeah, you bet. Taz in Ottawa. Taz. Good morning, Taz.
Yeah, that's interesting from the call from Orlando. I would say ease it up because...
Ease it up.
Ease it up.
But not wide open, Taz? But not wide open?
Almost there, almost like Saskatchewan. And the reason why I say this, and I had a hard time, I was on the fence, because we have to learn to live with this. This is more of an epidemic now, but still, if you were to go completely open up, you're going to have a lot of cases, and then we're going to go all the way back to stage one. And I think that's very dangerous. And I think these people are saying open it up. They basically are shooting themselves in the foot. You want to run before you walk. So I think that could be very costly, and we would be in stage one. So I'm very nervous. I really don't want to be in stage one. I really don't like lockdowns. I want to go to the cinema, but I can't do that. I mean, you can't even have popcorn. So let's ease it up. Let's have smart restrictions. Let's ease it up a little bit more than what Doug Ford said, 50%, because I think the economy is really suffering, and I think people they're getting tired and they're getting sick mentally as well. And I don't want to be in stage one, but if we open it up, what's going to happen? And I swear to God, I think people are not seeing this. We're going to go to stage one. There's going to be huge cases. Right. People have to look at that. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, it's a good point, Taz. Great point you make. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be right back. Final quarter, Rob Snow Show on City News.
phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What should government be doing at this moment in time with the pandemic and with the restrictions that are in effect because of the pandemic? Should it be keeping those restrictions in place, tightening things up even more, easing restrictions somewhat? Doug Ford, news conference, 11:30, expected to announce he's easing restrictions somewhat. Or get rid of them altogether. Get rid of every single COVID-19 restriction that's in place right now and get back to normal, get on with life. Popular opinion, majority opinion right now. Amir, good morning, Amir.
Good morning. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, sir. Thank you for calling. What do you think we should be doing right now?
I mean, honestly, I don't like the discourse. I mean, we keep comparing ourselves to Florida and Floridians as if they're beneath us. But I mean, it's been almost a year. They've been wide open.
Yeah. No, if that's what's come across there, that's not what I mean. That's what
I know. But I mean, we keep talking now. Floridians, they're hyenas. They're wild.
Neanderthals. Yeah.
But I mean, everyone's moving to Florida. Everyone's moving there. What is everyone?
Well, I don't know if everybody's moving there, but I'd certainly take Orlando over Ottawa right now. So
I mean, who wouldn't?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just that. I mean, we're saying, put your masks on. Everyone got to wear your mask. I was just in Costco.
Yeah.
I got 500 people to the left of me and another 1,000 to the right of me in line.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? But then I want to go to a concert. We got to be 5 feet apart. There's a concert in the center of Walmart at 5:00 every day. I mean, I just don't see why we aren't open. The UK's opening up. Germany's opening up. We're Canada. We got the most space in between. We got the lowest density per capita.
Right.
Almost in the world.
So you'd be all for getting rid of all restrictions? Like you would?
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Get rid of all these restrictions. I mean, we've been how many years now? I want to go into anywhere. I got to put a mask on. I want to go to the ski hill. I want to go skiing. Camp Fortune. I want to go skiing. Put your mask on. No, I'm not going to put my mask on. I'm standing outside. I'm not putting no mask on. We got people fighting each other in the stores. We got people, any reason to get mad at each other, putting the mask on. We'll go, why are you not wearing your mask? You're vaccinated. If I'm vaccinated, you're vaccinated. Why do you care if I'm wearing a mask or not? What, I have to put a diaper on so you don't shit your pants?
All right. Come on, man. It's the radio. Amir, come on, man. People. You have to watch the language. That's like 3 times in the last 3 days that somebody has said that word, and it's one of the 7 that you can't say. Dennis. Or is it Denny? Dennis?
It's
Denny. Salut. Okay. I'm okay.
So
okay.
I've got
and that means you can't say those dirty words in French either. Okay?
No.
All right.
But so I work in healthcare. I source medical equipment in all the hospitals in the region, and I see firsthand in the labs what's going on. Personally, I think, like others have said, we need to walk before we run.
Okay.
And we can't compare ourselves to Florida because in Canada, we have universal health care. So people get sick, they go to the hospital. In the U.S., I lived there for 9 years. They don't have that. So people don't go to the hospital. So their hospitals are not getting flooded because not everyone can afford it. So I don't like the restrictions, but right now we need to do that because the hospitals are swamped. The staff is getting burnt out trying to keep up with all the work, and people are getting surgeries delayed because people can't get in there. Now, we have extra taxes for people that drink. We have extra taxes for people that smoke. If you don't want to get vaccinated, your choice, but there should be a tax too.
You're in favor of the tax? You're in favor of the anti-vax tax? Really?
Absolutely, because if we do anything else that will make us sicker, there's taxes to help cover the extra costs from our decisions. This shouldn't be any different than anything else.
All right.
If you decide not to, that's your choice. But I shouldn't have to suffer and get delayed surgery because you decided you didn't want to get a vaccine.
Okay, well, that's a conversation for another day. We had that conversation the other day. But we're not having that conversation today. Maybe tomorrow's Friday free for all. Could go anywhere tomorrow. But Dave, Barhaven. Dave.
Hey, what's happening? Okay, listen, I don't think the government knows what to do at this point in time. I think they're clutching at straws, and they know it's an election year, so they're going to try to make themselves look real good. And just don't be fooled. I'm just saying to all the people out there, don't be fooled with smiling and, shaking hands and all that sort of doodah. They don't know what to do next. And if they want to...
The question is, what should they do, though? What do you think?
You know what? That's not me. I pay these guys to do the job up there, and they're not doing it. And they got to get everybody on board, which is a very hard task to do. But, they're like...
But if you say they're not doing the job, you must have an idea of what kind of job they should be doing.
Well... No, you got me. I'm not going to argue with you.
All right, look, we have. Let me ask you this, Dave. We've had a lot of people call in this hour. I count nine of the callers have said, "Open it wide up, get over it, move on."
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
You agree? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Why not? I mean, it's they're not having they're not making any progress the way things are going right now. It seems like that. They're making an awful lot of people angry and a lot of people waiting for surgery. And it's, this is not how people wanted to retire.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
You too, Dave. Yeah. I was thinking back to our conversation with Jeffrey Simpson, how a longtime national affairs columnist with the Globe and Mail was with us on, when was that, Tuesday, to talk about healthcare reform. And he put it so well. He said, imagine... the odds say you're going to live to, if you're a man, you're going to live to be 78 years old. And the hospital calls you or your specialist calls you and the doctor calls you and says, well, yeah, we thought you were going to fix your hip or your knee or your eyes in 9 months, but now it's going to be 19 months. And you're 70. Are you thinking, well, like, I've only got 8 years left. I'm going to spend 2 of them waiting for you to fix my knee? No, I'm going to fix my own knee. And he thinks that may act as a catalyst for at least a conversation about healthcare reform. Very interesting. Gary in Carleton Place. Gary.
Yeah, Rob, I just wanted to comment. I love your show.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to comment. I think a lot of people, especially in Canada, get really, really... we've been so afraid of COVID, and initially it was really bad. Then we had Delta. Now we have Omicron, but we're trying to compare Omicron to the initial COVID when there was so many more people dying. I mean, we talk about it now as, yes, if you're immune compromised and you get Omicron, there's a chance that there's going to be complications. But every winter we had a bad flu that went around, and people who were compromised or in retirement homes, a lot of those people, were not coming out the good end of it. So I just think we should open back up because we're just doing too much damage in other areas of society.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all the time we have for calls for the Talkback Hour. Still ahead on the program, Councillor Matthew Fleury is going to join us. We'll talk about the Housing Summit that was held yesterday by the Premier and Steve Clark, the housing minister in the Ford government. So we'll get into that and the heavy truck traffic, long-standing issue, the heavy truck traffic through the core of Ottawa to get across the bridge to the Quebec side. Councillor Fleury with some thoughts on that. So that's coming up right after the 11 o'clock news. And on housing, again, Steve Clark is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Had a chance to speak with him this morning. We'll play you that interview. And the world with Elliot Tepper as we talk about the situation with Russia, Ukraine, the West, 1 year of Joe Biden in the White House, and the many, many problems facing British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So all of that is in the final hour of the Rob Snow Show this morning, and Premier Ford's news conference at 11:30. Coverage of that as well. Busy. I told you we were busy around here. This is City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, January 20th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, under an extreme cold warning now from Environment Canada, feeling around minus 30. It's minus 20 in Ottawa, minus 19 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The number of people in ICUs in the province does continue to climb, even as the number of people in hospital from COVID did drop today. 72 fewer people in hospital compared to yesterday across Ontario. ICU patients, though, they've increased by 5 from yesterday's total of 589. The province is also recording another 75 deaths from this virus. The new case count has dropped below 8,000. 300 of the new cases are in Ottawa, 151 in Eastern Ontario, 59 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are 9 more cases in Renfrew. The Premier is expected to give an update on COVID measures in the province in about 1.5 hours from now. The GoVax clinic making the rounds in the area has a limited number of walk-in shots. These are usually by appointment only, but some walk-ins available. It is currently at the Curling Club in Smiths Falls. Now, between 11 and noon today, walk-in shots available for those children age 5 to 11. Then from 1 to 4 this afternoon, shots available for anyone over the age of 30. There are a limited number of shots available for the walk-ins. City News Time, 11:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Lots of sunshine, but it is cold today. Some areas under that extreme cold warning. It will likely expand that warning to include more areas. We've already reached our high for the day for the afternoon near minus 17, feeling like minus 28. Overnight, minus 30 will feel like minus 35, so a very cold start to Friday. For today, already reached the high for the day for the afternoon, minus 17.
And under that extreme cold warning now, it feels like minus 30 in the wind. It's minus 20 in Ottawa, minus 19 in Smiths Falls. More than 200 vehicles expected to take part in a tribute convoy to the life of Phil Smith. He's a tow truck driver who died Monday on the 417. The 33-year-old apparently left his truck to assist someone who was stuck in a ditch when he was hit by a snowplow under the White Lake Road overpass. The convoy will run from the RCGT parking lot to Canadian Tire Centre, then back again. That convoy expected to start leaving the ballpark parking lot about 1 this afternoon. There's also a GoFundMe page to help Philip Smith's young family of 2 children. It's asking for $30,000. So far, it has raised just over $8,600. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says our country will impose sanctions on Russia if there is any further military encroachment into Ukraine. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
There are already 100,000 Russian troops lined up along the Ukrainian border, and the message from Canada and its allies is clear. They are ready to act if Russia invades. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is in Brussels today and meeting with EU counterparts and the Secretary General of NATO. She says Russia can either engage in dialogue or face consequences.
Canada will be ready to take additional measures, particularly with respect to the financial sector. Canada and the EU will continue to work together on these measures if necessary.
But experts doubt Canada or NATO will physically be engaged in any armed conflict. Joly still won't say if Canada will send weapons to the Ukrainian military like the US and the UK are doing. Meanwhile, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity is warning companies and cities across the country of potential Russian cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Returns with Ottawa City Councillor Matthew Fleury. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Did you enjoy the snow this week?
Enjoy is one way not to put it. No, I didn't enjoy the snow. No, too much snow. 48 centimeters, too much snow. And my goodness, the cleanup continues, Councillor. I mean, my goodness gracious, it's they're still taking it away.
A lot of sidewalks, a lot of bus stops. I can't speak for across the city, but generally in my area, what I've seen is pretty impressive from the city team. Well,
I mean, a lot of progress has been made, but now, I mean, the real challenge is, I mean, especially, I think down the side streets of Vanier, Lowertown, we got to start knocking down those snowbanks. It's getting hard and dangerous to see around the corner for oncoming traffic or pedestrians or, as you point out, those crazy winter cyclists. So, nevertheless, I was told by the roads manager that effort starts on Sunday anyway, that the actual taking away of the snow, and usually the Byward Market is one of the first areas where they do it. So.
Yeah, snowbanks are quite high in the market. It does bring out the character of the area, but you're right. For a number of reasons, we can't wait for the snow to be removed.
Yeah, when they start looking like Camp Fortune, it's time to start taking the snow away.
We had talked about doing a cross-country ski race in the market a few years ago during Winterlude, but we put a pause on that because of COVID.
Sure. Let's talk about housing. Prices they've gone interstellar now. It's remarkable to see. The average selling price across the country is like $811,000. It's not just a Toronto thing or a Vancouver thing anymore. It's a thing in every community, and certainly, we're feeling it here in the city of Ottawa. So the provincial government had a housing summit yesterday. Well, what were you hoping would come out of that meeting yesterday?
Well, I'm very excited to see the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, Steve Clark, really bring a tone to collaboration, really bring a specific point on, hey, how can we do this? How can we work together? There's certainly a supply and demand issue. The more we can all collaborate to see more housing built, the more we can see diversity of options and availability, and through that bring affordability. You're talking about house prices, and when I look at the figures, I'm not in the market to buy a home, but I can only imagine if folks are moving into our area, if folks are graduating from university and college, if they're newcomers to our country and city. I mean, the average price of a residential home in Ottawa is over $700,000.
Yeah.
That's a condo, which, a smaller space in a building is over $400,000. That is unaffordable. That's not affordable.
Yeah, I mean, if we were just starting out, Councillor, we wouldn't be able to afford to live in Ottawa.
No.
Right?
And we've seen that issue. So many families have made the choice to live near Ottawa, but just on the outside. And we've seen that in Limoges, Rockland. We see that in Almont. And affordability and supply drives part of that issue. And even more so, it's even more challenging now with the risk of inflation, which appears to be.
But how much of that? Because we've just come through this official plan debate here in the city of Ottawa. How much of that is at the municipality's feet for some of its decisions on planning and zoning, and making it difficult from a planning point of view to actually build housing in the city?
Well, as I said, the summit, in my mind, really met the goals and objectives of setting, hey, we have to work together on a number of fronts, and we all have to look in our own authorities and see what we can do to accelerate the supply. And from a city standpoint, the planning process is one. Keep in mind the planning process, we use that term generally, but often the planning process is extremely important, but the following steps are building code services and legal services review, and those add time to an application. And you know what else adds time is winter. We have a large winter, so we rarely see new residential constructions between December 15th and March 15th, which narrows the window and puts a lot more pressure in our area. I think the official plan, though, back to your point, opens up a lot of conversations that are important. What do we where do we want to see new buildings built? How are we going to intensify, and how are we going to see the city develop without losing neighborhood characters, which is so important for our city?
Okay. In your role as chair of Ottawa Community Housing, I spoke with Steve Clark this morning. We're going to play the interview in a few minutes. And I put this question to him. I moved to Ottawa more than 30 years ago. When I moved to Ottawa, it was 10 years to get a unit in social housing. If I put my name on the list today, someone will get back to me in the year 2032 and say, Mr. Snow, your unit is ready in Ottawa Community Housing. And there were 10,000 names on the registry?
14,000.
Right. Well, that's what it is now. 30 years ago, it was 10,000. So my point is we've made very little progress on this. Why? And what can be done about it? What can be done about that?
A number of things. And what you have to keep in mind is within the residents who meet the income threshold to be on the wait list, there are priorities that the province sets, which are good priorities. If you're fleeing situations of violence, if you're homeless, if you're emergency medical, you're prioritized. So, Rob, being a healthy, strong individual like you are, you would be waiting with just a lower priority. So we're continuing housing more folks, but the list and the pressures continue to grow. So what can we do about it? Well, Ottawa Community Housing and our board, we have a board meeting later today. We've approved the construction of 10,000 units over the next 10 years. And what could we do to accelerate that? There's a number of things we could do. What those construction allow us to do is renew our communities, reshape also some of the older stock, and build new when we get access to land. There's also really important, we're seeing more and more residential rental buildings being built in the city, and that's a good sign. We have to have a little bit of an easier plug and play with the private sector on affordable rentals. I see other Ontarian cities, such as London, doing head lease programs, which incentivizes really a private landlord to ensure that they work with the city to take people off the wait list, but at the same time, as a private landlord, not take on new pressures, first and last month, if there's non-payment, if there's issues with the LTB, if there's damages to the units, which is very rare, but when there is, it can be frustrating for a private landlord. So there's a number of things we can do and we must do to meet the affordability need from the affordable wait list, but generally we have to look at supply and demand. So to me, I see it as an entire spectrum. The more we see housing built in our city, the better it is overall, and the more we can integrate a range of incentives and programs to support affordability.
Okay. Let's turn our attention to truck traffic in the downtown core. In a letter to the Board of Directors for the National Capital Commission, you say that reducing truck movements through Ottawa's downtown core streets should be accelerated within the next 5 years. Not later, and we need to remove trucks from the downtown core. And I'm thinking about the longstanding issue, of course, of Nicholas Street, Rideau Street, on the McDonald-Cartier Bridge. Yeah. Talk about a file where there's been no progress. It's as bad as ever. And it's a miracle that more people are not killed by this heavy truck traffic on King Edward, especially with all the pedestrian traffic along King Edward. My gosh, what can we do about this, Councillor?
Well, Rob, you've given the reality of the impacts of having those interprovincial trucks. We're not talking about trucks doing local deliveries here. We're talking trucks connecting usually northern Quebec through to the Windsor and GTA area, or even the state. So they're going through our city's core. We're the only city in Ontario where the 400 connection highways is not connected to the interprovincial crossing. And that is the fact here in Ottawa. It's the fact east of us in Hawkesbury as well. So there's a provincial responsibility through MTO to solve that issue. And the previous Wynne government had worked with the city to do a feasibility to look at that connection through a tunnel, connecting the 400 connection to the interprovincial bridge. As you know, the federal government had done a number of studies, and in 2012, the studies collapsed when it chose a corridor, Kel at the time, for a number of reasons. And here we are back where the feds are showing interest with a new crossing. At the same time, they have aging crossing. You have to keep in mind there's some real discussions about Alexandra Bridge and its status. There's the tramway from the STO wanting to cross into Ottawa's downtown, which is a unique opportunity, but that takes lanes off of existing crossing as well. So I wrote to the NCC board today to say, wait a minute, can we understand, can you be clear on Ottawa's problem relating to the truck route? Can you look at the life cycle of your existing bridges as well as the COVID reality, and what's the future of commuting after COVID, and then really meeting the city's transportation master plan and climate action plan?
Yeah, good questions. Very good questions, Councillor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, for the time. Yeah, Matthew Fleury, City Councillor for Rideau Vanier Ward. Steve Clark is the Ontario Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing. That's next on City News.
TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
And 1310 AM.
Let's talk about the housing crisis, housing affordability in the province of Ontario. The Ontario Minister for Housing and Municipal Affairs, Steve Clark, is here, fresh from his summit with municipal leaders yesterday. Good morning, Mr. Clark. Welcome back.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me back on the show. Hope you've dug out successfully from the big snow we had in Eastern Ontario.
Yeah, it's been a week. Let's just it's been a week. So yesterday, finally, you had a chance to gather the leadership of Ontario's largest municipalities together to talk about what can be done to make housing more affordable in the province of Ontario. What did you hear from your municipal counterparts?
Yeah, so yesterday's meeting, Rob, was a really good discussion with big city mayors and regional chairs to talk about not just the housing supply crisis, but really how we can coordinate our efforts to increase the supply of homes so that hardworking Ontarians can find a home that meets their needs and their budget. We have to work together. I said many times yesterday, there is no silver bullet. We just can't get people together and have a meeting and solve the crisis. This requires long-term efforts by all levels of government. I really left the meeting, and I know the Premier did too, with a really renewed sense of commitment, that there was really political will at all levels of government to really address and really create a long-term strategy that will get more shovels in the ground and more shovels in the ground faster. I think we all realize that we're in a severe housing supply shortage. You look at the Scotiabank report that came out that said Canada needs 1.8 million homes, and of that, Ontario needs 1.2 million homes just to match the G7 per capita average. Right now we're last. So, we've had some success. My Housing Supply Action Plan in 2019 did result in some success. In 2020, housing starts in Ottawa were the highest on record. 2021, they're even higher. But even with those high statistics, you and I both know there's still a housing crisis in the Ottawa area and in Eastern Ontario, and we need to do everything we can to put a plan in place. And, we announced some funding as well to help municipalities streamline their approvals.
Yeah, so it's a $45 million new fund. It's called the Streamlined Development Approval Fund. So give us an idea how municipalities could leverage that money. What could they use that money for?
Yeah, the Streamlined Development Approval Fund will really help Ontario's 39 largest municipalities do a number of things: modernize, streamline, accelerate processes to manage those housing applications. So the example I'll use is a municipality can use the funding to implement an online system that would make it easier for applicants to navigate the approvals process. So it'll help them manage their applications, really get them a timely update. And I think this is what Premier Ford has talked about many times, because he's a big lean methodology person. He brought that to government from his time in the private sector. And we're really encouraging municipalities to work with us. I'm working with the province's lean team right now, and we really need to use funds like the Streamlined Development Approval Fund, and also the other fund that I've created for large urban municipalities, the Audit and Accountability Fund, which really looks at finding efficiencies, hiring a third party to really put a plan in place to accelerate that creation of new housing and to also modernize services. We know because of COVID there's an incredible appetite for digital services, but at the end of the day, the plan's got to get shovels in the ground faster. It's got to build more houses of all types more quickly.
How do you overcome the opposition, though, that is frequently raised at, say, the council level, that sprawl is bad for a whole host of reasons, intensification is good for another whole host of reasons, and there's a lot of opposition to building more housing, say, in the suburbs? How do you overcome that?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I think that's the real challenge that our municipal partners have. That there's some have an aversion to intensifying around transit or providing more density, and as a result, there's more pressure on the urban boundary, and then you get people that don't want to do the urban boundary. The fact is, we need to build more housing. Yeah. That's the fact.
But then you'll also get accused, and this is happening right now in the GTA. You get accused of quote unquote paving over paradise. You want to pave over paradise, So.
Yeah, but I think we demonstrated that you can have a balance, right? There, we believe that there needs to be a mix of housing within communities, not just single-family homes. I think we all agree there needs to be more missing middle. There needs to be a lot more purpose-built rental. There needs to be family-sized condos. And I think there's a way to do it where you can create, and our policies reflect that, where you can create complete communities, where you can have that parkland, where you can have that new school built. I think there's a lot of merit in the policies that I've changed to put a good plan in place to provide that mix. But, talking about people objecting, I got a new phrase, Rob, and the Nando, the chair of Peel Region, was the one that told me we've progressed from NIMBY, not in my backyard, to banana, and that's build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. And I think that's where we've got to concentrate on, changing people's mindset. That we're in a housing crisis. We need to build 1.2 million homes just to get up to that G7 average and quit being the bottom of the G7 when it comes to per capita housing. But it means there's going to have to be a lot of shovels in the ground, and councils are going to have to work collaboratively with us as the province and also the federal government. We're going to have a problem with labor and immigration. We need to bring more workers that will help build these homes into Ontario and into Canada. And I know Premier Ford has talked to the Prime Minister, dozens of times about this problem. So that's another issue that came up with mayors yesterday, and that's the labor piece.
Okay, well, here's a question for you. I moved to Ottawa more than 30 years ago. When I first moved to Ottawa, the wait time to get a unit in social housing in Ottawa was 10 years, and there were about 25,000 names on the list. 30 years later, the wait time's about 10 years. It may even be longer, maybe 11 or 12 years now, and there's still something like 25,000 names on the list. In other words, almost no progress has been made on trying to whittle down the wait time for social housing. What can you do for social housing?
Well, we've done a lot, actually, and I think you're going to start to see that wait list become more of an access system. So back in 2017, the previous government had a pretty scathing Auditor General's report. There was probably 13 or 14 really, really important recommendations to reform the community housing system. And when we took over, there had been basically no progress on any of the recommendations. So we've created a community housing renewal strategy. We also created one system that every service manager in the province has to follow. So as of December 31st, 2021, they're all working on the same system for a by name list. So now those access systems are by name lists, so that you don't have somebody on 34 social housing lists in 34 communities across the province. You're on one list.
Right.
And when your number comes up, you take the first unit that's given to you, so you're housed and you're protected and you're safe. So it's no longer going to be a system where you just sit on the list for 10 years. Service managers are now going to be empowered to create that by name list. And what we're finding is many of those lists are reducing significantly in people because the people on the list are safe. They are housed. They do have a unit. Many of them have a unit right with that service manager. So I think you're going to see some changes in 2022 because of the work that we've done with service managers during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. We've actually spent about $3 billion on community housing since 2020. It's one of the highest investments in social housing that this province has made in its history. So I think in the months ahead, you're going to see a lot of very good work being done by service managers.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m., it's the RTV Quiz. Giovanni Petiti hosts a weekly trivia competition that lets you play from the comfort of your couch. Play along at home and challenge your friends. And don't forget to follow along on social media. Let us know who's top of trivia, and you can find yourself featured on a future episode.
Are you kidding me, folks?
The RTV Quiz, Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Rogers TV or at rogerstv.com/RTV Quiz.
When we turn a blind eye to racism,
we turn a blind eye to ourselves. As Canadians, we disavow all forms of racism. Built on a foundation of cultural acceptance, we choose inclusion, promote equality, and celebrate diversity. Choose help, not hate.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
This is Rogers TV Ottawa.
Well, good morning. On January 5th, our government put in place additional public health measures to blunt the transmission of the Omicron variant. At the time, we were seeing very concerning trends emerge. Cases were rising steeply. Percent positivity nearly hit 40%, 10 times higher than when Omicron was first identified in Ontario. Hospitalizations were doubling every 7 days. The data was clear. We needed to act. Today, we know it was the right decision. Percent positivity has now dropped to 15.9%. New admissions to hospitals are starting to slow, and patients are spending far less time in the hospital when admitted. And our health system workforce is stabilizing, with more people coming back to work than calling in sick. As I said at the time, while necessary, the additional measures were always intended to be time limited. They were one more tool to blunt the spread of Omicron and protect our hospitals. The evidence tells us that these measures are working and that we can expect recent trends to continue as Omicron cases peak this month. And while we can be confident in how far we've come, I want to be crystal clear, we're not out of the woods yet. The coming weeks will continue to pose real challenges, especially to our hospitals. But these are challenges our hospital system can manage. We can be confident in our ability to care for people, to provide hospital beds to those who need them. And we can be confident that the worst is behind us as we look to cautiously ease public health measures. As we do, Ontario will repeat the success of the past reopenings. We're taking a phased approach with 21 days between each step to make sure we haven't moved too fast. Starting January 31st, businesses in Ontario will return to 50% capacity. For the first step, arenas, concert venues, and theaters will be capped at 500 people. Social gatherings will increase to 10 people indoors and 25 people outdoors. If trends remain stable or improve, Ontario will move to the next step on February 21st and then March the 14th. Minister Elliott will provide more details on what's included in these steps shortly. But before she does, I know there'll be some who wish we could move faster. As I said, we need to remain cautious, especially with students going back to class this week. And I know there may be some who say we're moving too fast. Now, we want to be absolutely sure these positive trends continue as we move forward. And we want to do everything humanly possible to avoid having to go backwards. If that means pausing between steps for a few extra days, we won't hesitate to do so. The best way to make sure we keep moving forward, the best way to protect our progress is by getting vaccinated. If you haven't already done so, please get your first or second shots. And if you're eligible, boost up as soon as you can. Because so many of you have come forward for your booster dose, Ontario leads the country in third doses. This is fantastic news and something we should all be proud of. But it shouldn't stop us from wanting to do more to protect our families, our communities, and our hard-fought progress. So please do your part, get your shots. It's never too late. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Elliott.
Thank you, Premier, and good morning, everyone. As the Premier mentioned, earlier this month we made the very difficult but necessary decision to put in place additional public health measures to prevent our hospitals from becoming overwhelmed. At that time, our government announced that these measures would be in place for at least 21 days, subject to trends in public health and health system indicators. We are now approaching the end of that timeline, and thanks to the sacrifices of Ontarians and unwavering efforts of our healthcare workers, these measures are starting to have an impact. There are some positive signs that we may be reaching the peak of the Omicron wave in Ontario. However, we still need to remain humble and cautious. That's why, as we prepare to safely lift public health measures, we will continue with the gradual and cautious manner that has always guided our decisions. In the absence of concerning trends in public health and healthcare indicators, Ontario will follow a cautious and phased approach with 21 days between each step. Starting with January 31st, 2022, Ontario will begin the process of gradually easing restrictions in effect under the modified Step 2 of the Roadmap to Reopen. This includes increasing social gathering limits to 10 people indoors for social gatherings and 25 people outdoors. Capacity limits will be increased or maintained at 50% for a number of indoor public settings where proof of vaccination is required, such as restaurants, retail, gyms, and religious services. Spectator areas at sporting events, concert venues, and theaters will be permitted to operate at 50% of the usual seating capacity or 500 people, whichever is less. Proof of vaccination requirements would continue to apply in existing settings. Should trends remain stable or improve, Ontario will move to the next step on February 21st. At this time, we will increase social gathering limits to 25 people indoors and 100 people outdoors, and remove capacity limits in indoor public settings where proof of vaccination is required. Spectator capacity at sporting events, concert venues, and theaters will be permitted at 50% capacity. And capacity limits in indoor public settings where proof of vaccination is not required will be limited to the number of people that can maintain 2 meters of physical distance. By March 14th, we intend to lift capacity limits in all indoor public settings and religious services and ceremonies, and increasing social gathering limits to 50 people indoors with no limits outdoors. Proof of vaccination requirements will be maintained. Final recommendations on moving to each step will continue to be based on the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and we are committed to remaining cautious and responsive as we continue to respond to the Omicron variant. As we start to see some hopeful signs and begin to ease measures, I want to remind Ontarians how grateful we are for their sacrifices to keep one another safe. And to our healthcare workers, pharmacists, and other essential workers, it has been a long and difficult road through this pandemic, and it cannot be emphasized enough how indebted we are to you. As I mentioned yesterday, there's no question we will continue to face challenges in the weeks ahead. However, if we remain steadfast in our gradual and cautious approach, as more Ontarians continue to receive their vaccine and we begin to roll out antiviral treatments, and as we continue to use the full resources of our healthcare system, I am confident that we can manage the challenges before us. Thank you.
Before we take questions from the phone, we'll move to the floor first.
Hi, Premier. Matthew Bingley, Global News. Last October, you presented a plan that had a very ambitious opening plan that saw at the end of March the loosening of restrictions to the point where you were saying that masking would no longer be necessary and vaccine passports would no longer be necessary. Under this plan, it appears that March 14th, vax passports are still necessary at that point, and I didn't see a mention on masking. My question to both you and Dr. Moore is, do you think that you were overly ambitious with that original plan? And do you see a point where in cold weather, where we see cases rise, such as next fall, that these steps would probably be necessary, the vax passport and masking, to continue?
Well, first of all, back in October, we didn't see the spread of Omicron, and we saw the spread taking off at the beginning of January. That changed the game, and I'm 100% confident that that was the right decision when they gave us the data. And there was 3 things that we had to focus on. First of all, we saw the spread. The positivity rate was 40%. Those are staggering numbers. 4 out of 10 people were getting Omicron. Now we see it drop down to 15.9%, so that's positive. We saw the cases of the hospitalizations, they were doubling every single week. Now we're seeing that ease. And another big factor was the absenteeism of our healthcare workers, but not just our healthcare workers, other businesses right across the province. So we're seeing a positive trend. We're still very cautious, and I always say we aren't out of the woods yet, but we're taking a cautious approach to move forward. And I'm confident that we're going to move forward cautiously and get things back to normal as quickly as possible.
Dr. Moore, do you have anything to add?
No, I think the Premier's response was absolutely right on. In October, we had no understanding that Omicron would be declared a new variant of concern November 26th. We had a good plan in place for Delta, and thanks to all Ontarians, they were getting immunized, they were following all the basic public health measures to ensure safety in our community. So we've responded to a new variant quite appropriately. Sadly, we've had to put public health measures in play at present to best protect Ontarians and the healthcare system. And again, thanks to all Ontarians for the sacrifices they've made. It's made a difference. Our health system has been able to provide the right care at the right time for any patient with COVID-19. Certainly, we're at capacity in the healthcare system. We've made sacrifices for elective surgeries to be able to provide that capacity, but all Ontarians are receiving the care that's required at present, and thank them once again for their sacrifices. And we have to be adaptive to any new variant, and Ontarians have done that for Omicron. We do see light at the end of this phase of the pandemic, as the Premier has outlined, and we do see hope that the sacrifices have been worth it by the businesses affected. And like any public health measure, they have to have a time-limited place. And now that we've anticipated the health system being able to provide the right care at the right time for all patients in Ontario, we're absolutely prepared to remove the measures in a cautious and gradual, staged and phased approach.
Premier, the CFIB says that 1 in 5 businesses is on the verge of financial ruin and collapse. I know that you've already pointed to some of the supports that have already been presented, but they are saying that even with restrictions lifted, consumer confidence isn't there and they will suffer going forward. What more does your government need to do to add financial support to make sure that they don't collapse?
Well, first of all, my heart breaks for the businesses. I'm a business-minded person, own a business, I get it. I understand how tough it is to meet payrolls and meet the sales coming in and meeting all the challenges, but we've stepped up to tunes of billions and billions of dollars. We just put out a $10,000 grant. We're also making sure that they were taking care of their electricity costs and other areas of support from the federal government as well. Folks, you know, when we get back out there, I encourage you, go in, support your local business, go out to the restaurant, even at the 50%, please take a night out at least once a week and go to your local restaurant and support them, either takeout or you're able to sit inside. But make no mistake about it, I understand. I fully understand the pain they've gone through, but we'll come back. We'll come back strong out of this. Our economy is strong. I'm going to say it'll be like the Roaring 20s. We've seen 160,000 more people employed right as we speak right now than we did prior to the pandemic. We've created the environment for companies to come from all over the world and open up businesses here. We need more people. We need another 315,000 people to fill the jobs. So I'm confident about the economy. I'm feeling very confident. We're going to cautiously open up, and we're going to get back to normal as soon as we possibly can. I can tell the business owners, I can't stand closing them down. I know the doc knows it. I know the minister knows it. But health is a priority, and I follow directions and advice from our health team. And that's what was able to get us through the last few weeks.
Okay, we're ready to move to the phone lines for questions. First question, please.
From Rob Ferguson with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier or Dr. Moore. I'm just wondering, since in the past you've had to kind of pause or delay some of these reopenings, I'm wondering what specifically you would be looking at that would kind of be the tripwire for having to pause or temporarily halt these kind of measures? What are the key things you're looking at?
I'll pass that to Dr. Moore.
Thanks, Rob. So just in particular, it's not one number that we're monitoring. It is a series of data points. As the Premier announced, the percentage of tests that are positive is on the decline at 15%. So that is one indicator we're following very closely. As well, the ability to care for Ontarians in the intensive care unit setting, as well as in the hospital. Thank you to all the healthcare workers that continue to provide care. We're at 100% capacity for the medical and surgical beds, but we are providing care for COVID patients in the right place at the right time. The other metric is the number of outbreaks in long-term care facilities in particular, because patients have to move eventually from the acute care sector back into long-term care, or from long-term care back into the acute care sector. So those are some of the metrics that we're following, as well as the ability to care for individuals in the health sector. And the Premier already mentioned the number of people that are not in the workplace because they've called in sick. We're seeing improvement in those metrics, and they're plateauing in terms of the hospital use. We anticipate by the 31st that there will be ongoing improvements, but February will be difficult as well. We absolutely anticipate the need to have continued ICU capacity for patients, and hence the Premier's call to continue to get immunized, to continue to come forward for the third doses will be important every day going forward. 11 days to the opening, and we want a million more Ontarians coming forward. We can immunize more than 100,000 a day. So important that anyone with an underlying medical illness in Ontario get their third dose, especially those that are 50 and older. And there are appointments available across Ontario to do that over the next several days. So please take advantage of the availability of vaccine.
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Doctor. You were mentioning that everyone with COVID is getting the care they need, but a lot of people with needing cancer and other surgeries and heart procedures and whatnot are still on this pause. When will you lift that so that hospitals can get more back to normal? And when do you think, under the timelines for reopening, that you'll be able to get back to broader PCR testing than we're having now, with mostly limited to healthcare workers and people at high risk?
Well, it's very unfortunate that we had to provide Directive 2 to pause non-emergent, non-urgent surgeries. If people do have a life-threatening condition, of course, they will still receive the care that they need. But we know that many people are upset and frustrated at having their surgeries pushed off yet again. We want to get back on track with them as soon as we can. But that, as you know, both hospitalizations and admissions to ICU are lagging indicators, so we don't expect the peak of the admissions to ICU to happen until about mid-February, early first, second week of February. So as soon as we can see that the numbers are going down, both in terms of admissions to hospital and in terms of intensive care admissions, then we'll be able to get back on track with those surgeries and procedures, because, as I said, this is a very difficult decision to make, but one that we had to do to preserve our hospital capacity in terms of beds, but also in terms of health human resources. But I will ask Dr. Moore to perhaps comment further on that.
Thank you, Rob. Again, for the testing strategy, we take advice from the expert panel on testing and from our laboratory partners. We do have good capacity within the PCR system to review our testing criteria at present. Again, therefore, the most vulnerable, long-term care facilities, hospitals, those that need treatment, those with comorbidities, and First Nations, Inuit, Métis. But we're regularly reviewing the criteria for PCR testing. Again, this province has also been very aggressive in making available rapid antigen tests, so 3.9 million distributed this week through our education partners. So we're going to try to have a balanced approach between the access to RAT tests, both prioritized, but also having a population level access to RATs as well as to the PCR. So going forward, we want a balance between those two testing modalities. Clearly, the more labor intensive and the more difficult to get, so you have to go to an assessment center, you have to wait, get the swab done. For PCR testing, we're limiting it specifically to those high-risk populations and settings. And I hope the public, as we have more RATs generally available, will take advantage of them, because I do believe they're much more convenient, done in the calm of your home, and you have an answer within minutes instead of waiting several days for the PCR results.
Next question.
Your next question comes from Richard Southern with City News 680. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Good morning. Premier, you said at the beginning of the month that restaurants, gyms, and movie theaters were closing to protect hospitals. Can you then tell us today why restaurants, gyms, and movies are reopening before elective surgery is resuming?
Well, I'll just repeat what I said earlier on, Richard. There was three areas of focus. Number one is when we saw the hospitalizations double every single week. We saw the positivity rate go right up to 40%. Now we've seen it drop down to 15.9%. And everyone saw the absenteeism in your own workplace, not to mention the healthcare sector. You know, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we bolster the healthcare system. Keep in mind, folks, I'm going to go back a little bit here. The Liberal government fired 1,600 nurses. Our healthcare system was not in good shape when we took office. Since then, we've hired over 6,700 healthcare workers. We're going to be bringing in another 6,000 in March. We're putting billions and billions of dollars into the healthcare system. We want to make sure that we're prepared for any future pandemic. We've put in tens of billions of dollars into infrastructure and building new hospitals right across this province, and we're going to continue to invest in our healthcare. But we can't do it alone. No province can do it alone. Since I've been elected, we've been on the federal government for the CHT, the Canadian Health Transfers. We are paying, as Ontarians, 78% of the cost. The federal government, and it's not just this federal government, it's prior federal governments, I don't care if it's conservative or liberal, they're pitching in 22%. That's unacceptable. Every single premier is in line with making sure that the federal government pays their fair share of health care. And it's not one-time funding that we're looking for. We need continuous funding, nonstop, until we can hire more health care workers, until we can take care of our nurses, until we can continue bringing in new technology and building new hospitals. But I can tell you every single premier is in line on this. We're going to have a meeting today with all the premiers. We need the federal government to step up. It's very simple. We will not be able to move forward, not only as a province, as a country, with the federal government pitching in 22% and putting the vast majority of the burden on the backs of the provinces.
Follow up?
Okay, follow up for Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore, there's a letter posted online appearing to be from you addressed to the Niagara Region Chief Medical Officer of Health, in which you, quote, express concern with measures he's taking with schools in that region, including weekly CO2 monitoring in classrooms, the dismissal of cohorts if there's a positive case, and the use of medical exemption notes for masks. Is that letter accurate, sir? Cannot local medical officers of health make their own decisions? And Dr. Moore, what's so wrong with these measures?
So we meet with our medical officers of health on a regular basis. We have consultation to them from this office to local public health, and I thank all of the local public health officials for all their work they're doing to protect the health of their communities, both through vaccination and case and contact management and outbreak management. What I'm trying to have across Ontario is a consistent and persistent approach so that parents, school boards, families can expect the same level